the pot, the tea is hot. And it is special today. You're going to be happy that you're here because we have a special guest. We have Jackson himself from History with Jackson, a very well-respected Catherine of Aragon enthusiast and real-life English lad. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. Oh my gosh, I love Catherine. I love your content on her. The director of the Catherine of Aragon Festival, amazing. What got you into Catherine? What your love of her? Where did it come from?
Yeah, so I'm from Peterborough. Peterborough. Oh God, I sounded so American then. Sorry.
Sorry.
So I'm from Peterborough. No,
it's rubbing off.
No, I grew up in Peterborough, where Catherine is buried. So from day dot in school, Catherine was kind of rammed down my throat. Of this is about Catherine. This is what Catherine did. This is why Catherine's amazing. So it kind of stemmed from there. That kind of enjoyment of history, that enjoyment of Tudor history. But then I went off. I went off and played sports. I played rugby. I kind of fell out of love with history a few times. And then it was only really after I became, started being a historian during lockdown over here in the UK during COVID, where, I started to actually be a historian, do the primary source research. And when I came back to Peterborough after university, I was like, well, I've had so many fantastic opportunities, and I probably had some better opportunities than a lot of people in Peterborough. I want to give back to my city. Peterborough is one of the most deprived cities in the UK. We've got a high poverty rate, really low adult literacy rates, and it was just something that I felt really passionate about. Because I get to go, across the country. I get to see some amazing experiences. I'm friends with some amazing historians. I get to do some amazing work. I went to that festival as a young kid, and these children in the city don't have the same opportunities I do. They don't get to see the history that I do. So if I get to play a small role in bringing history to Peterborough and having Peterborians, see Estelle Perron, Nicola Tallis speak about this, then, I've done my small part of my job and give back to Peterborough. So a lot of my involvement in Catherine has come through wanting to give back to Peterborough, give back to my hometown. And just from there, I a couple of years ago I was like, I hate Tudor history. I don't want to be involved in Tudor history. But Estelle, Nicola, Owen, Kate, they keep drawing me back, and they go, oh, you need to look at this a bit more. So reluctantly, I do call myself a reluctant Tudor historian. I have been drawn into the orbit of Catherine, so doing it alongside my other research as a historian of dictatorships.
Yeah. Oh gosh, because she's just right there, isn't she? My turn to sound super American. Keep a tally. This is going to be one of the just tragically American things I say during this chat. But it really, truly blows my mind that you can walk into that cathedral and she's there. That's her, though. Right there. Anyone can just walk in there and go see Catherine laying there. That is... I don't blame you for feeling that pull and that call. And I'm glad that all of those people keep kind of scooting you and recognizing that it is so special to be from somewhere like that. I love hearing that.
Peterborough was named the worst place in the UK to live 4 or 5 years
Really?
Yeah, really.
That breaks my heart with how her story ended too, with them putting her purposefully in these horrible places, these cold, damp, dark, desolate places.
She didn't want to be in Peterborough. So that's the other thing that kind of ties it in really with people's people not wanting to be in Peterborough, as Catherine herself didn't want to be here.
Yeah, exactly. It's a layer to it.
So it is really sad, and the fact that her original tombstone, her original canopy is no longer there.
Yeah.
Just kind of adds this sad, tragic story of Catherine.
Oh gosh, it really is. And to make, speaking of sad and tragic story of Catherine, here we come with today's topic that we're going to discuss, because it's a shame that you can't really talk about Catherine's full story without mentioning Anne Boleyn and vice versa, because they are such independent people. But wow, their lives entwine way too much to leave the other out of the other story. But today, we're going to talk about kind of a different approach to that, right? Because Catherine's story was so tragic, and so was Anne's. Their stories, in a lot of ways, are very different. But them as people, Henry had a type. It was a strong woman. He got it from his daddy. He loved a strong woman. And Catherine and Anne, I've said it on the podcast and I believe it with my whole heart and soul. Now that it is all said and done and it's over, I know that they are up there. I think Catherine greeted her up in the great beyond and was like, girl, well played. I would have done the same thing if I was in your position. What can you do? You know, when the king picks you, what can you do? You can hold him off as long as you can. Yeah, I'm curious to know your thoughts on that dynamic of that transition from lady in waiting to enemy, because it did shift. I don't believe that their relationship was always this negative, vile thing necessarily, but it took a shift, definitely. But I'm so curious to what the actual dynamic between the two was in a day-to-day life.
Yeah, I mean, I take a stance on a lot of this is that we blame Henry, and we have to blame Henry because these are Henry's actions.
Mm-hmm.
The actions are not those of it's not Anne's fault. It's not Catherine's fault. It's no one else's fault. It's Henry. Henry makes these decisions. And I think this rival, you know, building upon some of the things that Owen Emerson, Kate McCaffrey, and Alison Palmer have said, you know, this dynamic is kind of thrust upon them. You know, Henry does pursue Anne, and he does install Anne in the household. It's his choice. It's not Catherine's choice. So I think there must be there's a dynamic there of, well, why is this woman in my household? Okay, I think I have an idea now.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to get on with it. I mean, Catherine did fight the last dying breath.
She did.
For her marriage, for the love that she had for Henry. But as you said, when the king comes calling, what can you do? I mean, Henry is an immensely powerful king at this point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I always think about that. There's so many mistresses. We don't know about them all. We know about Bessie Blount because of Henry Fitzroy. We only know about Mary because of the dispensation with Anne. If he would have never tried to marry Anne Boleyn, we would have no clue. It wasn't as if contemporary sources were like, hey, Henry's totally Mary Boleyn right now, and we all know it. No one, there's so many of them. You know, later on, watching his mistresses with Anne, because I'm in the middle of this massive Anne series, how quickly he goes through them, though. There's that imperial lady, then there's Jane Seymour. They go. And so I don't think Catherine was taking it extremely seriously in the beginning, right? Why would she? This will fizzle out. They all fizzle out.
Yeah, I mean, Henry had affairs beforehand, like as you mentioned. You know, there's possibly Jane Pollard, Mrs. Agnes Edwards as well. So there's a possible string of affairs there. But you know, she's raised as a European princess. You know, this is something that is kind of expected that would happen, and you know, kings beforehand have had affairs. I mean, Henry's grandfather, Edward IV, was a notorious cheat. So it's not like it's something that's out of the bounds. It is almost genetic with Henry. Mm-hmm. But then you look at how Henry is a person as well. Henry is a true romantic at heart. He is a true romantic.
So chivalrous.
And yeah, and I don't think these, you know, a lot of these affairs, yes, you know, there are allegedly children, but he does always have this desire of wanting to love, this idea of courtly love. I mean, you like Anna Cleves, he rides down there dressed as someone else, thinking that she would recognise him. Yeah. You know, he has got such a far-fetched idea of what romantic gestures are. So I think it would have been tough for Catherine. Catherine obviously doesn't like it.
Absolutely.
But who would, to be honest?
Her parents, like Ferdinand and Isabella. I believe that Ferdinand and Isabella loved each other. I think that they loved each other the way a king and queen can. He had mistresses, though, and they hurt her. They hurt Isabella, no matter how normal, you know, or how irrational it may seem. Human nature is there, and they would hurt every time, you know, that you see it happen. And Anne's, gosh, when it didn't go away, I'm in the camp because there's so many different opinions out there, and we don't know. Oh, gosh, I hate that we don't know. But I'm in the camp that as it kind of picked up and that Shrovetide joust happened, no more H's and K's, declare I dare not. Henry, God, he's not to make it about astrology, but he's such a Cancer. This whole elaborate thing, all of that's gone. It's getting serious. It's heating up. I like the sources I found out there that pull up the card game. They kind of suggest that maybe Catherine was sort of trying to keep her busy elsewhere or trying to, distract, because I don't think Anne wanted it at that point. I think she fled court to go to Hever to get away from him. That's the camp that I'm in. And so at that point too, I think Catherine would have been like, okay, yeah, thank you. Leave. Out of sight, out of mind. I know that there's that opinion out there that it's the game and the chase and, oh yes, but if I go away, he'll miss me. That's a big risk. I think she left to leave and let it simmer down. Banish yourself. She got banished for Henry Percy to let that drama die down. So will this, right? He didn't stop. The letters didn't stop. It didn't stop. Anne was religious. That's a thing her and Catherine have in common. Very religious people. And I think she kind of got on this whole, maybe this is this Reformation, maybe this is my calling. Maybe God chose me to kind of, be in this position. At that point that she said yes, I'm also in the camp that she didn't just say, yeah, absolutely, I'm all in, let's go. I think there was an asterisk. Catherine has to go. I'm not going to be your mistress. Let me know when the Catherine thing's figured out. But at that point, when she arrived back at court, I think it was on between them. I think that was a huge breaking point. We get these snippets of history, but these people live day to day. They wake up in the morning and exist around each other. And just to get out of that carriage and have to see her the first time, you were working for her, and now here you are, and how they danced around each other kind of thing.
Well, I look at most of it through Catherine. It's very interesting hearing the other side of it through Anne. Mm-hmm. Now, I know Owen, Kate and Alison have mentioned the letters and some of their work, and Anne not responding to these letters, Henry making the offer for her to be the official mistress, and she going, no, jog on. But through the eyes of Catherine, this situation does become incredibly difficult. Henry is so persistent. She as a contemporary quote says, she's beyond the ways of a woman. I think it's around 1519. And yes, they maintain a relationship, they still see each other, but he ceases to have a sexual relationship with Catherine from 1524. And she's in floods of tears. She's in floods of tears like that. So if this is happening, it's happening in the court, people are aware of it, it's going to be humiliating. But then Henry is also, I think the worst thing Henry does throughout this, bar the end of Catherine's life, is that he installs Anne in the household with separate apartments very close to his and Catherine's. That's humiliating. Yeah. For her to be treated like a queen in waiting, only down the corridor from the queen.
He's sitting there watching this play out. These women are dealing with this, or having to deal with what people are saying also. Those whispers, Anne already had a bad rap with the Henry Percy thing. That didn't look great. I also think it's cruel of Henry too, the way that he had these times where he would bring Catherine back. I did a whole series on Catherine first, 13 hours. I delve into just her. Because again, I love her too. I think you can love them both. You should love them both. They're both incredible people. Their story got really skewed for drama. And it didn't need to be because it's very dramatic all on its own. But the way that he would bring her back, right? He's so in love with Anne, he's going to leave me for her. But the sweat breaks out and he takes me and leaves her behind. There's hope. It's going to fizzle out. There's these moments of hope. I don't know what Henry is doing.
I think there's an important dynamic there for Henry to consider, is that Catherine is immensely popular. Yeah. Immensely popular. I mean, London loves Catherine. Mm-hmm. And towards the end of her life, when he's shuffling around houses in Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire, Huntingdonshire, and he never brings her close to London out of that fear. So I think there's that dynamic, but also she is still legally the queen.
Yep.
And if Anne dies of the sweating sickness, you can easily find another one if you don't really want to be with Catherine anymore. So I think there's that dynamic playing into that, and also to a larger extent, when he sends Anne off to Hever, or Anne escapes off to Hever for the sweating sickness, she's also not his responsibility.
No.
She is not his responsibility. No. Catherine is.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that, I think a lot of us in the modern period take the idea of faith for granted.
Yeah.
Because I think far more secular society now.
Yes.
But back then, that kind of treatment would have not just weighed heavy on Henry's conscience; it would have weighed heavy on his soul.
Oh, yes.
And that would have been absolutely awful for someone who is deeply devout, who is deeply religious, and actually is officially anointed God's servant on earth. So there's a real level of faith playing in
Oh
this.
my gosh, yes. Because God, thank you for saying that. Because I don't expect everyone to be a Tudor history person, right? And so if you don't know these stories deeply, you hear Henry VIII, yeah, he beheaded and got rid of wives because he was sick of them. It was so fun divorcing wives, easy peasy. No, I think that not having sons was interpreted as a sign from God. I think that Henry believed that Bible verse, and I think that his life is driven by this just fear for his mortal soul. Henry VIII is one of the most tortured souls, I think. And everyone pays the price for that. Because he doesn't just divorce Catherine, does he? He drags this out he wants the Pope's approval. Because yes, I believe what I'm saying, Church of England and all of that. But what if I'm wrong? But if the Pope could tell me that that's fine, I would really prefer that kind of thing. He does have that devoutness there.
Yeah, and he'd gone to bat against Martin Luther King earlier. Like he had gone to bat, like that, like his
defender of the faith.
His thesis against Martin Luther and Protestantism or Lutheranism is so damning. This is a man who believes in his faith,
yes,
who has strong set of beliefs in it. Defender of the faith is not just a gimmicky title that Charles waves around now.
Right.
It is a papally bestowed title upon Henry. Right. He's not exactly lax in these views.
Right. To ask the church to admit that they're wrong, to go to the church, be like, hi, I want to marry Anne. Remember when you gave us the dispensation for Catherine? Can you just say that Pope was wrong? Just say that he was wrong. Whoopsies. No, Henry, they're not going to do that. But he thought so. He's like, but why not? I am this extension of God on earth. But he did have that underlying fear for his mortal soul. Again, was it the lack of boys? Technically, yes. But it's so much deeper than that, because when the boys didn't come with Anne either, then it was like, oh, no, it was the sister. It was that affinity with the sister. We shouldn't have gotten a dispensation for that either. She wasn't the one either. Oh my God, my soul. Like, I think he was back in it. Whoops, I tried. It was not Catherine, but it wasn't you either, sort of thing.
I get a lot of, me and Kate have a couple of arguments about this. I do stand up for Henry a little bit, because you look back at Henry's life and what a lot of other kings have. Mm-hmm. Is, if when Edward IV is off, being a 20-year-old lad going around England and anything that moves, his mum is very much a guiding influence. She is incredibly powerful at court. He has an older brother figure with the Duke of Warwick. So there are guiding figures there around Edward who are just as powerful, but have been there his whole life. So they are not only politically powerful and socially powerful figures, they are familially powerful figures. Henry, by 1527, 1536, hasn't got a lot of that. Cardinal Wolsey's power is dropping. Also, his mum passed away when he was very young. His older brothers died, again, very young. And Margaret Beaufort has not long passed away. So the guiding influences that would have been around Henry, people who he would have written to or gone and sought counsel from, aren't there to say, hang on a second, we can do this and this, and it'll be fine. Yeah. Those people with experience of royal power, he doesn't have he has no chance to lean on that. No. And a lot of these nobles, after Henry comes to power, he does get rid of a few unpopular nobles from Henry VII. Yes. So that influence that other kings have had, Edward IV, Henry VI, Henry V, that influence they have around them is no longer there. Right. And does kind of remove that buffer. Now, I know I get a lot of grief for defending Henry in that way, but I do think it needs to be said.
You won't get it from me because I completely agree with you. I will say, don't leave. Don't leave, please. I'm not a full-blown Henry VIII like sympathizer, but people are very complicated. And I don't expect everyone to be a Tudor history buff, but he's projected just across centuries as this just evil, vile, no feeling, no remorse, rah. Where I argue that no, he felt a lot, and debatably too much sometimes. I think his emotions were a big thing here. He did not have that guidance, that being shut away. I understand what Henry VII, because again, I have unpopular opinions about Henry VII as well. But I understand where he was coming from, right? That fear, that paranoia, that this crown is new and I have to keep him away and shut him away. You're not thinking of what that's doing to Henry, the man you're creating there. That's not great. And then, yes, he gets out and he's king now, and he is surrounded by these young men. He has his counselors. He's just going to kind of, we should execute these people. Great. We need to make that point. As a king, it's sticky. I do not envy royalty. I couldn't do it because you can't make promises that you can't keep. You have to. If you say you sign this document, you agree to this, or I'll kill you, you have to kill Thomas More over that, or no one's going to take you seriously. You need to not make those in the first place. You needed that guidance. Yeah, that foundation.
And I think with Catherine, the annulment, and I think it's important to remember as well, it's an annulment. It's not a divorce. It's an annulment.
Yes.
This marriage does take a big hit on Henry as well, because Catherine has been raised to rule. She understands what it's like to rule. She's been there alongside Henry, helping him rule. That when she's gone, and that annulment officially happens, and Anne and Henry officially are caught as king and queen, that guiding influence, that almost co-monarchy relationship that Henry and Catherine have had for the vast majority of that 20 years married has disappeared. It's all on Henry's shoulders. I think we forget how important Catherine was as a queen. She was the first female ambassador. She was regent. She was an advisor. And the model of a wife that she builds up for Henry is something he tries to replicate across his next 5 wives. So, this marriage is, far more important than any of the other 5. Right. Whilst I hate pitting them against one another,
I know. Yeah.
It's so much more than just a husband and wife. It is far greater than that.
Right. So do you? Oh my gosh, this is refreshing, because also I get the same reaction of like, are you about to defend Henry right now? It's like, I'm not defending him. Just hear me out. People are complicated. Do you also think that he meant it at the trial when he said, I wish with all that I had that God approved of this marriage, I would have lived with Catherine the rest of my days and been happy? Or do you think he just said that for show?
No, I think he actually loved Catherine.
I do too.
I think he genuinely loved Catherine. I don't think he loved the other 5. I mean, if you look at the letters to the surviving sources we have of Henry writing to the other 5, they're very lusty. They are very lusty. To Catherine, they're not. And they are such deep, heartfelt, meaningful letters that he's written to Catherine that I think there is a deep love there between Catherine and Henry.
Yes.
And I think he means it, but I think he's also been pushed into a position via various pressures. She is she's incapable of giving him any more children. She's incapable of giving him a son again. And I think it's important to stress, give him a son again, because they did have sons.
Exactly.
Henry Fitzroy is ill. He's a very sickly person. Does that creates a pressure on Henry as well? And also, how popular is it going to be to legitimize your male son when you have Mary there? Yeah. So I think there are various pressures on Henry which make this difficult and push him into a position where he has to do something. But I think he goes about it in the wrong way.
He does, yeah.
There are ways to treat your wife. Publicly dragging her name across the ground in Europe is not a choice I'd make.
Yeah. No. And then being like, it's fine, guys. I'm just going to go out there and talk to them. That whole stunt, and his advisors are like, can you please not go out there and try to talk to them? It's not going to work. It didn't work. No one's on board here. Catherine was so loved. I think that Anne loved Catherine at one point too. Again, why wouldn't you? That letter from her when she's a child, how old? We don't know. But that letter to her father when she says, I hope when I come back, I'll be a worthy woman and the queen will take the trouble to talk with me. Such a wise person. Again, I think she meant that everyone loves Catherine. I love how this turned more into let's talk about Henry and how his dynamic affected everyone here, though.
But on that point, I absolutely hate that we try and talk about these 5 or 6 women without including Henry. I think it's really bad for us to try and talk about them 6 in isolation, because Henry is such an important part of their lives, regardless if it's a year or 2 years, because it's defining. He either divorces them and the rest of their life is defined by how he treats them, or he kills them. So I think it's really silly for us to try and not mention Henry when we're talking about some of his wives.
Right. During all of this, though, while it's all going on with Anne and Catherine, the whole time I'm doing this series on her, and when it all kind of started to fall apart, and all of the sources and everything I was looking at, there was so much stress. I know what's going to happen, but there was still so much stress. I'm like, where is Charles? Charles is coming. Any moment, Charles is going to bring an army right in here and he's going to come solve this whole problem. Where's Charles? And I feel like Catherine felt that too. She's sitting in isolation, like, hello, where are you? And again, he's making it look like, yeah, okay, I'll come, I'll help you. And it never comes. Like the abandonment this woman experienced. Henry has to be an out of sight, out of mind person. He can't watch Catherine go through this. He can't watch. I realized Tudor kings did not show up to executions, but I wonder how different it would have been if Henry had to show up and watch Thomas More be executed. I think it would have gone differently, because I do think that he felt, I think that he did love her, and I think he loved her until the end.
I think he does. I think he did love her till the end. I think as well, it's sad that her life is bookended. Her life in England's bookended by abandonment. She's abandoned by her father after Arthur's death. She's abandoned by her nephew after 1531, when Henry officially abandons her. And I think it's such a sad point that the people who are supposed to have her back don't. And the only person who really has, or the only 2 people who really have her back for the entire of that, are Eustace Chapuis and Maria de Salinas. And it's really, really sad. And that yellow point, Chapuis and Edward Hall say that Anne wore yellow.
Chapuis.
But, and then you also have a couple of sources stating that Henry wore that yellow. And I think if Henry wore that yellow, I think that's really damning, because I see that as, it's a calculated insult, firstly, but then I think it's also Henry's way of trying to distance himself. That's done.
Yeah.
That's done. We're here with Elizabeth. We're celebrating Elizabeth. Yes, I've got a daughter. No, I don't want a daughter, but I've got to deal with it. And I think it's all his way of dealing with things. But yeah, it's the way she's treated is horrific, not only by Henry, and I think you raise a good point about her family in Europe. They are not innocent in any of this.
Where are they? It's so shocking. Again, I knew how the story ended, but I'm sitting here and today feeling this pressure. She must to wake up every morning and just be like, maybe today is the day. Maybe I won't know. Maybe he won't send word. Maybe they'll just show up. You're said like that hope. And yeah, the years in the sun of it being okay. You made it through that. The abandonment, the hardship, the journey, you fought, you didn't give up, you stayed in there, and like you came out on the other side. This was God's calling, this was your position, you did it. And then here we are, like to look around, to have it end like that is just, she could have never seen that coming. And I don't think she did for so long. I think she just kept thinking it was going to fizzle out. Why would it not just fizzle out? And I think if it wasn't for Anne having the personality that she did and saying, no, Henry, You listened to me. You've ruined my life. You told me that this was going to happen. I said I didn't want to be a mistress. I'm looking a lot like a damn mistress. If you're going to divorce your wife, do it. It sounds harsh, and it is. But what is this? We can't all be married to you. You need to figure it out, kind of thing. And she presses him. And I think that makes a difference, right? But I think Anne felt a sense of guilt towards Catherine. Let me tell you this. I might blow your mind right now because this blew my mind, Jackson. So I'm doing this Anne series, and I get to the part about the wearing yellow. And again, I love Catherine. It breaks my heart what happened to her. And so I'm like, yeah, no, I want to find this quote. I know that Hall said it. I know that he said it much later. Taking that with a grain of salt. I want to see what Chapuis said. I find the letter and I read it, and I'm like, this must be a shortened version. I keep looking and looking and looking, and I read the letters. I have it here somewhere. He never mentions Anne wearing yellow. I was looking for that direct quote. I was like, I need to hear the part where Chapuis says it, and he doesn't. He says Henry, all clad in yellow. He doesn't mention Anne being there that day. Again, I have the letter here. It is so bizarre. He doesn't mention her because I'm like, I need to know what Chapuis says about that day and how he says Anne behaved. Because again, I'll take it with a grain of salt. However, I do believe what Chapuis says because he can't just lie. And I do hand it to him as a source because he's very good at saying, I heard this from a person that said. He's very good at saying, I wouldn't take those words at face value. This person is, he's good at that. So I wanted to see. And he doesn't mention her being there. It's wild. I don't think that she was there that day. He mentions her 8 days later and says he heard from someone she was happy about it. And then later she cried and said that she hopes she doesn't come to the same thing. But that's all he said. Isn't that wild? Again, that changes it for me, right? Where was she? I think that she felt weird about it. I think that he made her show up to that Christmas. And I think that she didn't show up again because she felt awkward about it. Was like, Catherine was there. I should not be up here. You need to do something. I think she took herself out of it. And I don't think she went to those celebrations because Chapuis would have said it. He would have said it. Again, I take Hall's, even though I don't know if he technically didn't even write that part of it, right? I think his printer did. I just read all this great research by Suzanne Linscomb. And she said, oh yeah, by the way, Eric Hall's printer wrote it before this date. And I'm like, he didn't even write all the Anne Boleyn stuff? Some other guy did with an agenda? What? Maybe he misremembered. It would make sense. But Chapuis doesn't say it. Isn't that crazy?
So when I was reading those sources, I took it from Chapuis that he's written about what Henry's wearing because that's the important part, and this man fucking hated Anne so much. So I saw that acknowledgement of what Henry's wearing is a grander acknowledgement of what the royal family is wearing, and his omission from Anne from the source is just purely down to the pure hatred that he has for that woman. Because you read some of the other letters and it's like, I hate that woman.
Oh gosh, he loves to hate her. Yeah, he loves it. Like, let me tell you what someone said about Anne, the concubine. Gosh, that's so interesting. Okay, so you think he just kind of lumped them together in that? Because I was like, ooh, he's gonna drag her that day. Here we go, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, he's still reeling from Catherine's death as well. Like, he'd just been at Kimbolton with Catherine. He thought she was going to be okay. He left thinking, yeah, she's all right. And then suddenly Catherine takes a turn for the worse. So, given how close he was to Catherine, how much of a champion he was for Mary, I read it as a deliberate omission.
We won't even.
To be honest.
Okay.
But that's the great thing about this being a historian and being able to look at these letters. We all have different interpretations.
Yeah, like who knows? Yeah, and they paraded the little bastard around him like she's two. It's just you gotta appreciate the loyalty there. But yeah, I thought that was so interesting because I was like, I want the direct quote. Let me find it. Like, oh, nothing in that whole letter about her. How interesting. Because I don't think she was a vile, evil person. And I think that she would have felt weird about it. I think she would have felt something. I think she would have felt something not good. And also, yeah, look what he did to her. Like, that could, hopefully this works out for me. Hopefully I'm right. Hopefully this is a boy. Hopefully, we've got this, because if not, look at this. Look what he did to Isabella and Ferdinand's daughter. Who am I? No one's going to even threaten war over me.
And I think it is a moment for instability for her as well, because that main attention of admit that Mary's illegitimate, admit that Anne's the queen, and we're fine. Just get on with it. Admit it, we're fine. Get on with it. I think that kind of distraction goes, and then suddenly, when Anne is not, performing in a way that she should be performing, there's scope to change that focus, and the number one person in the sights there is Anne, and Henry is still reeling from that death. I've seen other sources which talk about his private melancholy, him being upset about Anne. And why wouldn't you be upset? You married her when you were 18. You were together for 24 years. That's going to have an impact. And who are you going to take it out on? Or maybe the person you might blame for that death.
Oh, yeah, the blame game with Henry, too, yeah. I think that kind of helped fester his love for, Jane Seymour and those mistresses that sympathized with her, too. I almost think in his mind, it made him feel better, right? Like, oh, Jane is a Lady Mary sympathizer. Maybe that brought a strange comfort to him. And Henry is so complicated. He's so predictable, but also at the same time so unpredictable. He's such a just enigma.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking with Elizabeth Norton the other week, and she was talking to me about the personality differences between Anne and Jane. And I do think this whole thing about Jane is rather it's quite forced with Henry, because he's trying to show off this dynasty, and look, Jane's the mother of Edward, but she's not as nice as Anne is. And Anne is pretty disliked among the nobility. Jane's pretty disliked among the common people. So there's also this competition of, well, Catherine was loved by everyone. Jane is not liked by these people. Anne is not liked by these people. What am I going to do? How can I rectify this? I'm never gonna. I can't reach those levels again. But then the irony in Catherine's death is that he only needed to wait 6 years, 7 years.
Yeah.
And he could have had his affairs, kept on going how he was, and she. I mean, that's the benefit of hindsight. But she dies in 1536. Beginning of 1536 as well. So it's, there is an irony in, he could have had what he wanted, and he just lived with Catherine.
Just trusted it. Yep, trusted God, trusted that it was all meant to be. Yeah, trusted that dispensation, that ticket that God wrote and gave to the Pope, and he gave to you that said, no, it's good. We're good here. The dynamic between them all is really so interesting, and you only get these little snapshots of them, but every single day, every single day you're around these people. And again, Catherine, you have to get up and put on your queen dress every morning and go out there and just, be a queen, and it's all fine. And Anne gets that too. Ooh, I got to the part of her series where she stands in front of the King's Council, and I say it. I'm like, there's no way she didn't feel something. There's no way these words coming out of her mouth did not get her when she told them, I am the king's true and wedded wife. Like, ooh, that was Catherine's mantra for so long, and now he's got you standing in front of them saying it too. And Henry's just over there being tortured, just trying to interpret these signs from God at everyone's expense.
And I think with Henry, it's impossible to ignore as well. But I think with Henry, there's a sense of his sense of true power there with Anne. Well, towards the end of Catherine and beginning of Anne, really comes to the fore, because he's finally free, away from the power of the papacy, to do as he pleases. And I think power goes to Henry's head. I do argue across several things that he becomes a tyrant, but it clearly goes to his head. 15 years before this, he would have never in his wildest dreams imagined treating Catherine the way that he treats her. 20 years before he executes Anne, he'd never imagine treating any main love interest in his life in that way. It's I think that the power dynamic there really plays a role. And Henry really is, I think, morally corrupted by it.
Yeah. Yep. No, I completely agree. And with everything else kind of going on behind the scenes, I also think, and it kind of goes unmentioned with Henry, but I have a feeling that you've probably thought this too. But chronic pain, untreated chronic pain will do something to someone. Being in chronic pain all the time. Granted, we can't use that as an excuse for Catherine, can we? But going forward, that pain, always, no escape. You can't take anything. Every day of your life, it gets worse. You were so athletic. Him storming off on Anne during May Day, didn't look at her or anything. Oh, was it also a little bit because that was your first tournament? You had to sit out. You were this prize, the chivalry. You did this, but this was your first one. You're hurt. Now you're a spectator. All this is happening, and I'm done because I'm Henry, and that's how it goes. But the chronic pain element as well, I think, goes unnoticed.
I feel like you've listened to some of my things about Henry now. Well, this is why I feel in part an affinity with Henry. I've played sports. I played sports most of my life. I played really intense physical sports. Within those sports, major injuries are part and parcel of that life. I've broken my collarbone. I've been out for a year with it. I've done major ankle injuries. I've done my ACL at my knee. These are major injuries. And I can, in part, understand that kind of anguish that Henry goes through. I never executed anyone, but I kind of understand the level, because when you're playing such a high level, and you're competing at such a high level in such a physical sport with a huge amount of camaraderie, you lose that. And it's not a gradual loss. It is a very sudden loss. You can't partake. So when I had my collarbone, I was out for a year. When I did my knee, I was out for 18 months. And it does make you the worst version of whoever you are. My parents, my brothers would argue that I turned into a complete and utter arsehole. It does accentuate the worst parts of your personality. And I think Henry already was predisposed to be a tyrant. There was conditions there that were already festering. And you have that major moment that turns him into that. And he has nothing there's no way to kind of argue against it, because your legs done, you're ulcerated, you've got, with that, he's going to have a huge amount of head trauma. I've gone through concussions, they're pretty bad. I couldn't concentrate for more than half an hour for 6 weeks when I had my last big concussion. Wow. I get what Henry's going through. And it does, and I do get a bit of stick from this, it does make that life and that personality so much worse in a way that someone who plays sports can't comprehend.
Right. Yeah, God, see, I appreciate that take. It's all these little things, this upbringing, things that have gone on since then, things weighing on his tortured conscience. Yeah, those injuries, what went into these jousts, and how her role in this, and they would come out in these pageants, like essentially these parade floats, and come and offer these deer and shoot them in front of her and lay them at her feet. Like, these were rehearsed. These were a huge part, the costumes, everything that Henry loved, and it's gone. And it is swift gone, no going back. There's nothing you can do.
And I cannot describe the adrenaline drive from hitting another man with the full force of your body. I cannot explain it, but it is incredibly addictive. I played rugby for 2 years longer than I should have really should have done. I pay for it majorly now. I mean, I'm only 26, but I still pay for it. And Henry's doing these tournaments regularly. He is training regularly. The adrenaline rush that man, because you are addicted to it. You are absolutely addicted to it. Even though I'm retired, I physically can't play rugby anymore. There is not a moment where, if I was physically capable of doing it, I'd go back in a heartbeat if I could. And I know that Henry would have felt that, and you have to find ways of replacing that, because there is so much adrenaline going through. Otherwise, Henry didn't find a way to replace that adrenaline. There's no physical way that he can. So he gets fat and cranky. And that's the only way to deal with it. And you see from NFL, NHL, rugby players, soccer players, when they quit sport, they either go two ways. They either go to the gym and get super fit, super stacked, because that's the way to get the adrenaline release, or they become fat, cranky pundits. And there's no, it's literally either or. And I think, Henry didn't have the opportunity to go to the gym, get fit, because he's in immense pain. So he becomes a fat, cranky armchair monarch who, is chasing women for his adrenaline punches.
Gosh, I think you just nailed it. Again, thank you for that perspective, because it is so important. And not only did you get cut out of that, it would be like your rugby career ending, but also once a month or every other month, you have to go to this giant rugby party and just sit there and watch everyone play rugby for you, though. They'll do it for you and send you finger guns down there. Like, how hard? Again, his dad wouldn't let him. He wasn't allowed to, and now you're back to that feeling of no. And Henry doesn't like no. No one does. But Henry really, really doesn't like no. And it's the ultimate no.
And it's a huge personality shift as well. It was a huge personality shift. I mean, in Europe, Henry is considered this Renaissance, sporty, good-looking king. He's up there with Francis. They're both, these pictures of health. And, his massive personality change. It's no longer Henry the sportsman. It's Henry the dickhead kind of thing. And, that personality change, as alongside that, withdrawal symptoms from the adrenaline rush, that's the tough part of being injured as well, is having to, redefine who you are and who you see yourself as. Henry, I think this riding accident 1536 personality stuff is bollocks. But that is still from 1536, when he can't play anymore onwards, that he is redefining himself as a person, and he's going through the mental anguish of that, but also is in pain. So it's a tough gig for Henry, and I will give sympathy where sympathy's
right due. You have to give it to him. There's a lot of times where we are very disappointed in Henry. I'm very disappointed. The monasteries. I am mad at you, Henry. What was that? No, he does a lot to execute people. What are we doing? The monks. There's a lot where I'm like, but there are moments. It is very refreshing to chat about that. Gosh. Well, listeners, viewers, that was not the topic you were promised, but it was the topic that you got. And it's an interesting one. How differently people's lives could have gone had Henry not just crawled his way into them. And if he would have trusted and just let the universe play it out with Catherine. I've never thought of it that way, because yes, cancer is cancer, right? That would have happened. I don't know. Don't come for me on that. I'm not a medical professional. So if someone told me that stress and anxiety would ramp that up and make it quick, I would absolutely believe it, because you're not supposed to live in stress and anxiety just constantly at a biological level. Stress is supposed to save your life, that fight or flight. You're not just supposed to live in it every day. It wears on you. The perpetual stress that these people are subjected to every single day is something that, again, you read a sentence in a book, but there's so much more going on. These are real people and real emotions and real complicated dynamics. And I appreciate you giving me your time at all to talk about them with me and share your knowledge on it. Oh my gosh, you are so close right now. I'm not going to lie. I've been looking at your bookshelves and stuff. I'm like, he's in Peterborough. Did I say it right? Peterborough.
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 Yeah, sorry, I went American when I said earlier.
I know. I
Peterborough,
low key was like, I'm gonna let him say it first, just to make sure I don't ruin that one. But I'm like, he's there right now. He is in proximity to her.
literally 5 minutes, if
How
that.
much?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it's yeah. I'm at the cathedral pretty much every other week.
Wow.
I think it's incredible, actually. You know, it's not very many occasions where I go and look at another cathedral and go, it's not quite Peterborough, but every other night, yeah, it's one of the best places. And to be able to celebrate Catherine's life every January for the festival as well is just something
Oh
else.
yes, that is on my bucket list one day. I cannot wait to go to the Catherine of Aragon Festival. You do such a great job at keeping her memory alive in that city. And thank you for working as hard as you do for the city of Peterborough. I cannot thank you enough, Jackson, for being here.
No, thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed, chatting with you about Catherine, Anne, and of course Henry. So thank you very much for having me, Maddie.
Absolutely. Check them out, History with Jackson. You don't want to miss it. The content is, you don't want to miss out on what he's putting out and what you're going to do in life. Again, such an honor. Thank you so much. And catch us next time. Bye.